Good morning, Unity of Brooklyn. God bless each and every one of you. Very excited to be with you here today. Once upon a time, there was this guy who went to the doctor and he says, "Doctor, I need something to stir me up, something to get me fired up, to get me going, get me in a happy mood, in a fighting mood," right? He says, "Did you put anything like that in the prescription that you've just written?" And the doctor says, "Well, not exactly, not in the prescription, but you'll find it in the bill that you'll get later on." Good morning, everyone. When the guy gets the bill, I think he's going to need a little bit of comfort, right? And that's what we're all talking about today. We're talking about comfort in troubled times. And this is a very important topic. Lloyd read very well the story of Jesus in John, when Jesus was talking about his departure. Even though he's a young man, he's telling his followers, "I'm not going to be with you much longer," And of course, if you've ever been with a teacher who has been very impactful to you, and you learned so much and you grew so much, and you're coming to that time when maybe the class is going to end, or the term is going to end, or the year is going to end, or whatever is going to end, you're faced with the prospect of moving on beyond that teacher. And I know for me, there have been, probably for all of us, there have been some significant teachers in our life who have given us so very much. And the thought of being without them, boy, it just is scary. You don't know if you can carry on. You don't know what's going to become of you, right? And there's this apprehension, this tension, what's going to happen. So Jesus is trying to explain this to the disciples, right? They're a little confused by what he's talking about exactly. But something that's very interesting here is that Jesus, in describing the future of the ministry, does not assign or empower one of his disciples to carry on for him. He doesn't say, "Look, Peter or John, you're going to be the authority now. I'm leaving, but I'm empowering you to carry on the work that I've done." He empowered all the 12 to go out and preach and to heal, as we know, but he didn't single anyone out. And he didn't reserve it for just those 12. He says that all of us will come into the Father. And so, Jesus is not giving us a lot of structure to hold on to as he's declaring his departure from this earth existence. But he does say something, and I wonder, how those disciples took it. He says, "The Father is going to send you someone, give you another." That's what Lloyd read. "An advocate to be with you forever. The Spirit of truth is going to be with you." He called it the Spirit of truth, the advocate, the comforter, and of course, the Holy Spirit. So this is what Jesus promised to us. And in that promise, he says, "I know you're going to go through hard times, but I'm giving all authority to that Holy Spirit. You will find whatever you need. The teachings that you've heard from me, you will hear now from the Holy Spirit." And of course, he's not talking about an individual presence or physical form, but he's talking about that Spirit of God within us. And so, we ask ourselves in this time that we're living, these very difficult times, these troubled times that we're living, where the losses just continue to mount up. Our resilience has been tested to the max, right? We've been asked to continuously give way, find new energy, stand forth again. And it's not just, the pandemic, the fear of getting infected, the fear of illness or even death. we've suffered that. We've suffered economic downturn. Many have lost their jobs. Their careers have been upended. Businesses have shut down. We're all having difficulties in economic recovery from this situation. But I think it's more than that. I think it's pointing to a deeper challenge that in the midst of all of these losses, to remember the truth, to not give way or be seduced into separation, into hate, into judgment, into condemnation, into limitation of vision. We've been challenged at that at the biggest level. And maybe, the greatest need for all of us has been this need for comfort. The other day I heard a podcast, which really, wow, was just impactful to me. It was an interview of a man named Ty Seidel. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He wrote a book called Robert E. Lee and Me. And the book is a story of his relationship with the Confederate General Robert E. Lee. Because when he was growing up in Virginia, he was taught that the Civil War was fought over slavery, right? That was the main issue. That's what he was taught in school. But outside of school, in the environment where he lived, there was this great story about the hero and the gentleman, Robert E. Lee. And this guy had really latched onto him, really seen him as a model, right? And carried that through his maturing and his education and so forth. He went on to become a PhD in history, can you imagine? And he's teaching at West Point Academy, right here in New York. And he's teaching students that the Civil War was fought over slavery. But inside himself, he still held Robert E. Lee to a very high, he still saw him as a hero until one day he had an epiphany. He had a wake-up call. And suddenly he saw what many of us have already seen, but he saw this so clearly he had to write a book about it. He saw that Robert E. Lee was a racist, that he'd been fighting on the wrong side for the wrong issues, for the wrong ideas. And so he felt it necessary as a PhD in history to write a book telling the truth about who this guy was. And in this podcast, the interviewer says, how do you get to your 40s in life as a PhD in history, and you still didn't understand that the Civil War was about slavery and that you held Robert E. Lee so high? I mean, I'm glad you had this epiphany, said the interview. I'm glad you're seeing the light, but man, what did it take? And he says, you know what? It's hard for me to answer that question. But the bottom line that I've discovered, he said, is that the story is stronger than the fact. The story is stronger than the fact. As a PhD in history, he knew the facts, but internally, in his emotions, the story he had been told about Robert E. Lee continued until his epiphany, and then his eyes were open and he saw a different truth, right? So that's what I'm talking about. We're not just talking about facts about equality, facts about science, facts about this or that. We're dealing with the stories that we hold on to, that we see as true. And it's so hard sometimes, so hard to face those stories over and over again and know that, sometimes the eyes are opened and sometimes they're not. And we've been called upon in this time to hold on to that light of truth in such a strong way. And yet, for me, I'm sure for you, life has been from chaos to creation. Chaos to creation. I'm remembering Winston Churchill, right? He's famous for saying one damn thing after another. life has kind of been like that. One damn thing after another. Chaos. Come in. What am I going to do with this chaos? What am I going to do with this disruption, this loss, this hate, this separation, this judgment, this condemnation? What am I going to do with that? I got to get creative. I got to bring truth into this. And so we've been challenged to work at keeping ourselves centered and to remember what Jesus told us. I'm leaving. In a physical form, I'm leaving. I'll always be with you. But I am sending an advocate, a presence, a power, a comfort, the Holy Spirit to be with you. Let me share a story from the scribe of the Course in Miracles, a lady named Helen Shukman. She lived right here in New York. She was a professor of psychology in Columbia University. And she was the one who received the download of the Course in Miracles and actually scribed out everything that she heard. She had help from William Thetford, who typed it all up. And that's how we have the Course in Miracles today. But this is a story that doesn't appear in the book. It's just a personal part of her story. I think you might be able to relate to this. Helen is on a subway train in New York City. And she's having an experience that wherever she looks on the subway, all she perceives is darkness, ugliness, heaviness. You know, everywhere she looked, maybe some people looked threatening. The subway looked dirty. It smelled. Everybody just looked like they were lost. There was no sense of good, of light anywhere, just enveloped in darkness, she says. And as she's sitting on that subway, observing how this darkness was just enveloping everything, suddenly she has an experience where she says, a projection came through my eyes. She says, a new vision just came through my eyes, like watching a screen. And in this vision, she sees herself as a girl. And she's walking towards a temple or a church, a sacred place. And she says that as she walks, she's feeling very confident, very kind of bubbly. She gets to the threshold of the church. And in the church, she sees this huge white light. And as she begins to look at the light, she notices that there seems to be like a very large chair. And she begins to make out a form, like a strange light being sitting on that huge chair, let's call it a throne. And she says, even though it was huge, she says she didn't feel afraid. In fact, she felt like she wanted to approach that light. And so she walks into the church with peace, with openness. She gets up to that great light being, which she identifies as male. And she says she kneels down and puts her head on his knee. Just rests her head on his knee. And she said, as she did that, this being of light put his hand over her and enveloped her in light. And she said the light was so intense that she said everything turned into light. She says, I was the light. And just as easily as the vision started, it stopped. And boom, she was back in that subway car. And nothing on the outside had changed. Nothing had changed. Everybody was still sitting in their seats. The smell was still there. Everything looked exactly the same, but her perception of what she saw changed completely. She looked at each one and she said she could see the face of God in every person. Independent of their outer features, she could see the face of God in each room. And that whole space, that inner space of the subway was just illumined with light. And she concludes the story by saying, all of my sorrows ended in that embrace. That embrace when that great light being surrounded her with light. Boom, she says, all of my sorrows ended in that embrace. And I share that story with you, friends, because I know that you have had a similar experience. Maybe not a vision like the way Helen had it, but I know that in times of trouble, that in times of loss, that you have reached out with cries, with longing, with desperation. And you said, God, help me. And we know that sometimes that help is given immediately. Sometimes it comes later. But sooner or later, that advocate, that comforter, that spirit of truth envelops us. If we're willing, if we know that that presence is there, if we call upon it, then it will be there for us. Here's a great truth. Life is animated by a single fantastic energy, which is the essence of everything that is, including you. There's just one single energy. And just as Tanya was reading in her meditation today, that single energy is what we call the activity of God or the Holy Spirit. This takes nothing away from the metaphysical Trinity or the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but it is that activity of God that is so essential for us. Because it is because of that essence that you are who you are, is what you are made of, and it can never leave you. It can bring you peace in the moments of stress. It'll give you strength in moments of weakness. It'll give you courage in moments of fear. It'll give you wisdom in moments of confusion. It will offer forgiveness in moments of anger and love in the moments of your life. And all you have to do is to remember that it's there. Now, some of you may be saying, well, how can I do that? How can I do that? In Unity, we talk about prayer, meditation as being the essential practice. But what's important about that prayer and meditation is that it be a regular activity for us. If you have the habit of calling a friend or a family member on the telephone, right? And you call them and they answer. You don't need them to identify you. You don't need to say, hey, who am I talking to? Just the minute you hear their voice, you say, that's the person I'm calling. That's the person I know. The register of their voice immediately offers you an identification. Why is that? Because you talk to them often. You call them often. You have that relationship, right? And that's exactly what we need to do with the Holy Spirit. Every day, friends. We need to sit, breathe, open our heart, and allow that Holy Spirit to fill us, so that all our sorrows will end in the embrace of the Holy Spirit. It does ask of us quite a bit. It asks us to surrender our thoughts, to surrender the story, to surrender the identifications that we might have. It calls us to surrender the truths that we think that we know. It calls us to do all kinds of letting go, surrendering, forgiveness, openness. It's a huge effort. But what is always there for us is that presence and power of the Comforter. You know, Aristotle said, we are what we do repeatedly. And so repeatedly, we call out, we join, we know. So how can we do this? How can we do this? What I'd like to do with you today is a little bit of an exercise, all right? A little workshop with you here. You can keep your eyes open. It's all right. We're going to do a little meditation in just a moment. But here's what I'd like you to do. Imagine that you're before a huge whiteboard, okay? And in the middle, you're going to write, I am. Circle around, okay? I am. Now, everywhere else in the whiteboard, I want you to fill in the rest of that sentence, right? So you might start with your name, your age, right? Your gender identification, whatever that is, right? Your race, your relationships, you know, I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a brother, I'm a sister, I'm a grandfather. Put them all these things, all these different things. You can talk about your education. You're a high school graduate, you're a college graduate, you're a this, you're a that. You know, put them all down there. Just imagine yourself filling in I am, all of these identifications. You might even talk about the things that you own, right? I own a car. I got a wonderful apartment. I got great clothes. I got a beautiful watch, right? I got all these things. Write them all down. I am a watch owner, right? Just imagine yourself filling in all the I ams. I am this, I am that. The positive, the negative, doesn't matter. You know, I am strong, I'm faithful. You know, sometimes I'm a little emotional, a little unbalanced sometimes. Just put it all down there, all right? So imagine now that around this big I am in the center, you've got all of your thousands, right, of identifications of how you complete that sentence, I am. Right? I'm patient, I'm kind, right? All of these things, just all of them. Now, I'm going to put the marker down. We're going to pick up the eraser. And one by one, we're going to begin erasing all of the identifications. Okay? Start with the last one you put down first. Start erasing, 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 erasing. Just see yourself going all over the board, erasing all the identifications. All of them are slowly beginning to disappear now. Now you're getting close to those very basic identifications. I'm a man, I'm a woman, right? Whatever it is. I'm this race, I'm that race. My name. Erase it out. So that the only thing left is I am. So we're going to take 2 minutes in meditation right now to just hold that I am without any identification, no name, no gender, no relationship, just I am. Don't worry about the time. I'll keep the time. 2 minutes in the silence. And so it is. I hope that in that space of time, as you felt other thoughts come in, you could release them and just hold that emptiness, that powerful space of the I am. Because, my friends, that is what Jesus promised us. And the power of that is that all our sorrows end in that embrace, in that presence, in that power of spirit. Let me share this poem by Rumi, the Sufi poet. Rumi is expressing this poem, the agony and the ecstasy of the divine is the name of this poem. He says, in the orchard and rose garden, I long to see your face. In the taste of sweetness, I long to kiss your lips. In the shadows of passion, I long for your love. Oh, supreme lover, let me leave aside my worries. The flowers are blooming with the exaltation of your spirit. By Allah, I long to escape the prison of my ego and lose myself in the mountain and the desert. These sad and lonely people tire me. I long to revel in the drunken frenzy of your love and feel the strength of Rustum in my hands. I am sick of mortal kings. I long to see your light. With lamps in hand, the sheiks and the mullahs roam the dark alleys of these towns, not finding what they seek. You are the essence of the essence, the intoxication of love. I long to sing your praises, but stand mute with the agony of wishing in my heart. When he's talking about that longing we have to feel that presence, and we know it's right there. So, friends, as we face the chaos and seek to move it into creation, we remember that Jesus so long ago made a covenant, a promise with all of us. I'm not going to leave you with some support, with some guidance, with some comfort. I may go, but the Comforter will always be with you, available to you. Seek that comfort. Open your heart. Release your identifications, your beliefs, your stories, however important they may seem. Let that longing for God take you to that place, that I am, that presence. And I know that you'll find that all your sorrows will end in that embrace. God bless you all. Thank you.